Connor, do you think decades from now you will be telling your children about where you were for the Danny Sprinkle legacy performance against USC? The Washington Huskies, they fell behind what? Was it 18?
I picked USC to win by 19. They were up by 18 at the half, and I was feeling damn good about it.
Yeah, Connor was beating his chest on our group chat, our sleepers group chat, just say like basically heralding himself as like this great lines maker. We had our friend Eli Bettger, our former Heat Check colleague, say like, "Hey, at least we're gonna cover Connor's alt line when Washington was making its push." Ultimately, though. USC let him hang around. They came charging back in the second. Of course, we get this Hans Steinbach, just incredible performance down the stretch. Washington hits they go seven, they make seven of their last eight shot attempts. Got a great Des Claude performance and a revenge game. And ultimately, Washington comes out 84-76, getting the win on the road, riding the ship a little bit. And I would say showcasing some of the prowess that led to preseason hype for people like me. I was all in on this Washington team going into the year. I've been very disappointed with how they fared. This reignited some of that hope, Connor. What did you see out of the Huskies?
Yeah, what was interesting to me, they went on two separate 13 to nothing runs in this game, um, in the second half.
Hmm.
And they did so without really hitting threes. Like they hit a couple on those runs, obviously, but um, in the game, they really didn't hit many threes. I think this game was more about their offense or their defense than their offense, right? Like this was the second worst raw offensive performance for USC on the season.
Hmm.
Um, USC with like 10 minutes left in the game or whatever it was, 7 minutes left in the game, had a 94.7% chance to win per Ken Palm. And you just watched, and it wasn't a slow burn. You watched it quickly dissipate. Um, whether it was Desmond Claude having the best game of his season so far, um, whether it was Wesley Yates kind of playing really well down the stretch, getting a couple of steals, like this Washington team finally, I mean, and we've seen it because they did the same thing against UCLA. UCLA just held them off. Like this is a team that you can't count out. They scored 54 points in the second half and held USC under 30.
Hmm.
Like that's just it's ridiculous. Hats off to them. I am based on that performance, I have no problem admitting that I was 100% wrong with my final score prediction. Um, we can talk about USC, but I think where other collapses, you can talk about the team that lost. This one, like 100% credit to Washington because when you're down 18 at the half, like, it very easily could balloon in the second, and they didn't let that happen. I'm pretty sure Kentucky was down 18 at the half to Gonzaga.
And they very much let
So
it balloon. They let a hot air balloon still traveling across the Atlantic if you consider how they let that balloon. Yeah. It's interesting you make that point about Washington's defense, especially down the stretch. It's crazy, holding a team under 30 that you get 48 points to in the first half. And that was kind of the story those first 20 minutes. I thought Washington was letting Southern Cal get out in transition. They got gashed in the paint a good bit. At least it felt like that. It seemed like whether it was Chad Baker-Mazara, Ezra Osar was banging a little bit down there. Even Jerry Easter. Jerry Easter, he was someone we highlighted in the preview as, just his size. He's probably 6'5". I think he's listed at 190 as a freshman. So good frame even on him coming in as a rookie. Like he has given Southern Cal some like rim pressure even in the absence of Rodney Rice because that's what they need in this guard room. Like early on, it looked like, okay, no Rodney Rice, no problem. They're getting production from these ancillary pieces. I mean, Jaden Brownell stepped out, hit two threes as well. It was like across the board, they were leaning on these secondary guys. They got a pretty good Jordan Marsh game as well. It just seemed like everything was so easy. But then about halfway through the second half, you see something click a little bit for Washington, and I give a ton of credit to Claude. Then sometimes it would have been easy. Again, early on, like first half, I think he only had 4 points. It seemed like he let like this whole like revenge game narrative sort of get the better of him, and you saw him kind of doing the Des Claude thing where he's snaking ball screens, getting into the paint, but instead of looking to get other guys involved, he forced some tough ones around the basket and just didn't necessarily have the best shot selection. But I thought down the stretch in this one, he had such a great feel of when to kick it out for three versus when to take it to the rack himself. And it was like I would say, 99th percentile good Des Claude game you're going to get. However, maybe if you're a Washington fan, you think he started to figure something out. And, in some cases, I think he and Zoom Diallo are a little bit redundant with each other. They do the same thing. They're both the bigger point guard types who don't really have much of a jumper, but kind of looked like that pairing. There were some takeaways there where it's like this pairing might just work together because you have two attacking guards and they can both pass a little bit. And I don't know, you can stagger their minutes and make some things work there. But yeah, I just thought like the guard room as a whole, it like really stepped up in the second half. But that was kind of my observation. But was there anything that you noticed from Washington during their run when they began to cut into that lead that you thought really swung the game or even Huskies fans can look forward to going forward?
Rebounding, limiting second chance points. In the first half, USC didn't out rebound. I don't think they out rebounded Washington, but they like didn't let Washington just dominate the glass. In the second half, USC had 12 rebounds, six offensive, six defensive. Washington had 25, six offensive, 19 defensive.
Wow.
So like there was just a huge mismatch. They were getting the ball, passing it out, getting up the floor, and beating USC's defense down the floor, which led to a lot of good looks. Um, Not necessarily always in transition, but just against a defense on its heels. And I think, we talked about it. I spent a better portion of that preview talking about how Kepnang and Somerville couldn't rebound. Now, Somerville only had three, but Kepnang had eight. Steinbach had 16 rebounds in this game. So
That's a good
it was
transition to the best player on the court in this game. Like, I thought the supporting guys, I thought you got a pretty good Frank Kepnon game, especially in the second half, was
mhm,
way more impactful defensively.
five
But if you're
blocks
not,
for
yeah,
Kepnang.
yeah, he was awesome in the second half. But if you're not gonna, lean into the Des Claude angle, of course, the biggest talking point here is Hans Steinbach. I thought as good as Claude was in the second half, it felt like Hans kind of got them started just with his effort on the glass, with his ability. He had that coast to coast like dunk attempt where he ended up getting fouled. I think he made both free throws, but it was like, oh yeah, this is the kid who's going to be a lottery pick. I'm glad he is woken up and he is swinging this contest. I thought he was so good down the stretch of this one as well.
He was, and I feel like he was the only one who could get anything going in that first half, really.
Hmm.
Um, and it wasn't even that impressive. It's just like he got sent to the line and made all four, and then had the eight rebounds. But in the second half, like it was the Des Claude show, but Steinbach was also there to put up 14 and 8 in just the second half with two assists. And yeah, I think this says more about Washington than it does about USC for me. Because it just shows Washington the second game in a row and they finally completed it, can like come back from any double digit deficit. Uh, for USC, I'm going to view this one as more of a blip on the radar. Do I think they probably hold off Washington if they actually have a point guard on the floor? Yes. But they didn't, and Washington took advantage of that. And and USC, I think, much like a lot of the other teams that have been blown out, like a Purdue, like a Gonzaga, like they're just going to have to lick their wounds, come back in their next game and try to figure things out. I choose to believe it's more of a blip on the radar because I still think this USC team is really, really good. But as someone who was a huge Washington skeptic coming into the season and had every reason early on, especially against Colorado, to like not believe in this Washington and Southern to not believe in this Washington team, the fact that they were able to come back from down 18 against USC, and now they have like three to four relatively not easy wins, but like very winnable games before Big Ten play starts. Like they're set up where they could, like I think they'll probably be 10-3 heading into Big Ten play with this win over USC, set up really well to kind of make a run at an at-large bid.
I think that's a great point, Connor. Like if you enter Big Ten play at 10-3, especially with some of these early losses, with that, even going back to that Baylor loss, which is I would say Baylor has shown some warts since then to where you're probably kicking yourselves a little bit that you hung around in that game but couldn't get the job done. But when you're looking at with Hans, we knew he was going to be an elite rebounder. Like the dude was just so productive in the top league in Germany last year, dominated the FIBA U19 World Cup. Like that was the skill that was going to translate from the jump. But I think you're seeing him show a lot more skill, some passing chops. You mentioned the two assists. That one the kick out he had to Des Claude, where I think it pushed the lead to four. That was kind of the dagger where Washington never looked back. Like he has such a high IQ, and you're seeing him set his teammates up. And even though he is the best player, and I think he probably realizes it, I don't know if Des Claude knows that. He still has the wherewithal to make an unselfish play to get a great shot there for Claude. And if you're gonna get this version of Claude like once every few games, and you're sort of maximizing Diallo and maybe Wesley Yates starts making shots, then yeah, the outlook looks way brighter for this Washington team.